Have you ever wondered whether a whole chapter of human history may have been erased? It appears to be a record, written in power, purpose, and sacrifice. Evolution, the agricultural revolution. Most people have heard these ideas in one way or another, but what if it was never so simple? What if those ancient legends, stories of gods, angels, giants, and world-shattering disasters, were not merely myths, but far more real than we have ever imagined? Look again from another angle, and you may glimpse an entirely different current of human history, one that overturns mainstream understanding and redefines power and civilization itself. This is an alternative history deliberately concealed and even erased from humanity's collective memory, and now it is rising back to the surface. In early 1946, in the region now known as the West Bank, a group of Bedouin boys were near the ancient ruins of Qumran, grazing their sheep and goats. To pass the long, monotonous hours, they did what they always did. In the rugged, desolate desert, they picked up stones and threw them aimlessly until one of those stones was hurled into the depths of a dark cave, and they unexpectedly heard a sharp, tremendous sound of shattering, ringing clearly from within. Driven by curiosity, they entered the cave to investigate and found a row of enormous clay jars. One of them had already been broken. In that moment, they had no idea that what they had just touched would become one of the most important archaeological discoveries. Those jars had sealed away a collection of exceedingly ancient scrolls. In the years that followed, archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters found more broken scroll fragments in more than a dozen caves around the area. These documents can be traced back roughly from the 8th century BCE to the 9th century BCE. Together, they formed a vast body of texts, later known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among these manuscripts, a substantial portion came from a work long neglected by mainstream religious tradition, a mysterious religious text even deliberately avoided, the Book of Enoch. The complete Book of Enoch is composed of 5 parts: the Book of the Watchers, the Book of Parables, the astronomical book, the Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch, more than 100 chapters in all. These chapters tell the story of Enoch, the 7th patriarch in Genesis. He was the father of Methuselah and the great-grandfather of Noah, the very Noah later described in the Bible as intimately tied to the Great Flood. But the world portrayed in the Book of Enoch is vastly different from the familiar version of the biblical canon. It offers an entirely different pre-flood narrative of hidden history. In this text, the world's chaos does not arise from humankind itself, but from beings known as the Watchers. In biblical and apocryphal tradition, they are described as angels sent to earth, charged with observing and guiding humankind. Yet in an age unimaginably remote, they did not stop at observation. The Book of Enoch states plainly that these watchers were drawn to human women, and soon crossed the forbidden line to unite with them. From this crossing of boundaries was born a new kind of being, the Nephilim. The Nephilim are portrayed as beings of colossal size, brutal in temperament, astonishing in strength, and a direct threat to human society. They plundered, destroyed, and even devoured humankind, described almost as man-eating giants of myth. Because of them, the world sank into utter ruin. At last, the gods resolved to punish this chaos run wild. The Watchers were bound in chains and imprisoned in subterranean dungeons, deep within the earth, while the Nephilim were judged to be wiped from existence. In this process, Enoch became the mediator between the gods and the imprisoned ones. The Book of Enoch describes in detail his journeys between heaven and earth, how he walked beside angels, looked down from the heights upon mountains, rivers, and the very ends of the world. Yet even then, the gods still believed that the earth had fallen beyond redemption. The final punishment then descended, a flood that covered the entire world. Before the flood arrived, Enoch was taken away from the world. It is said he rose into heaven on a blazing chariot of celestial fire. This is not the only place in the biblical canon where the Nephilim are mentioned. In Numbers 13, 32, 33, Israelite spies entered a land inhabited by the descendants of the Nephilim. They described just how towering its people were, so tall that the Israelites themselves seemed as small as grasshoppers. Of course, in the modern world, many biblical passages are often regarded as prophecy, or seen more as philosophy and myth than as true historical records. But the problem is this: in Earth's history, we have indeed found archaeological evidence of great floods, and this event also appears at the same time in countless religions and cultural traditions worldwide. So, If a race of giants like the Nephilim truly once existed, should they not have left behind similar evidence? In our previous 30-minute documentary about giants, we systematically examined a large body of records from North America concerning enormous human bones unearthed, including reports from many newspapers. From the late 19th to early 20th century, these materials point together toward an unsettling conclusion. Ancient giants may not have been fiction, but real beings who once lived alongside early humans. And this phenomenon was by no means limited to America. In the Amazon rainforest, in Africa, and in other parts of the world, abnormally huge skeletal remains have also been found. In fact, in the histories and legends of nearly every civilization, giants are mentioned in one form or another. The famous explorer Marco Polo once recorded a race of giants living in Zanzibar. They were said to be so strong that they could carry 4 ordinary men at once. And in what is now Tunisia, locals still claim that the founder of their city was a giant named Antaeus. According to Irish myth, off the northeastern coast lies the Giant's Causeway, formed by 40,000 interlocking hexagonal stone columns. It was built, they say, by the Irish giant Finn McCool, so he could cross the sea and duel another giant in Scotland. Similar stories are scattered throughout Norse legend and ancient Greek myth. Perhaps if these cross-cultural and cross-regional records point to more than coincidence, then what the Book of Enoch describes is no longer merely prophecy, but something closer to a buried true history. It is worth noting that for a considerable span of history, the Book of Enoch was regarded as an important scripture in Christian and Jewish tradition. Many early sects not only accepted but believed that the Book of Enoch was one of the sources of inspiration for Genesis in structure and narrative content. Then the question arises, if it was so important, why was the Book of Enoch ultimately excluded from the biblical? To understand we must return to the first centuries after Jesus' death. Unlike the Bible we know today, with its 39 books of the Old Testament and 27 the early Christian world, actually contained a great many different gospels and religious texts. As Christianity expanded rapidly, the church gradually faced a practical problem. Which texts should be read? Which teachings should be followed as orthodox? To build unified authority out of diversity, an official canon became almost inevitable. In modern popular culture, such as Dan Brown's novel The Da Vinci Code, this process is often portrayed as having taken place at the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century, secretly controlled by Emperor Constantine and the church hierarchy, to serve some political or religious conspiracy. But in truth, this claim does not accord with history. The Council of Nicaea did not decide the final composition of the biblical canon. Still, although the exact process was exaggerated by literature, one fact cannot be denied. For a long period of time, the church leadership did make choices about which texts entered the canon. They debated, excluded dissenting views, suppressed rivals, and consolidated their own authority in the process. This process of selection did not take place at one single council, but unfolded throughout the long evolution from the 1st to the 4th century. By the end of the 4th century, the biblical canon had largely taken shape, and the Book of Enoch was formally excluded. So why would a text so important, one that could even shape an entire worldview, be abandoned? To answer that question, we might look at other Gospels that were excluded as well. For example, the Gospel of Peter, whose fragments were discovered in Egypt in 1886, records a long-missing scene of resurrection. Jesus walks out of the tomb with 2 gigantic angels standing beside him and a cross that can speak. A voice from heaven asks, "Have you preached to those who sleep?" And the cross replies, "Yes." Then there is the Gospel of Mary. In this deeply controversial text, Mary Magdalene is described not only as a disciple of Jesus, but perhaps as the person closest to him. In the book, Peter questions why the other disciples should listen to a woman's teaching. Matthew answers in return, if the Savior deemed her worthy, who are we to deny her? The Savior clearly knew her better than we did, and therefore loved her more than us. Just like the Book of Enoch, if these stories are so astonishing that they could overturn our understanding, then their exclusion by early authorities from the Christian canon is perhaps not surprising at all. By all rights, the Book of Enoch should have vanished completely into the river of history, were it not preserved among certain obscure Ethiopian Christian sects and within Jewish tradition. In fact, the only complete pre-modern version of the Book of Enoch was written in Ge'ez, an ancient African language. It was through this version that Richard Lawrence, Archbishop of Cashel, completed the first English translation of the Book of Enoch in 1821. And this text later became an important for the study of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Even so, the Book of Enoch remained excluded from the official Christian canon and was gradually forgotten in later history. It was mentioned only in the most marginal, most obscure corners of religious and theological studies. Yet what is fascinating is that within the Bible itself, there still remain many passages that echo the Book of Enoch. For example, the descriptions of the Nephilim in Genesis and Numbers clearly differ from those in Enoch. Genesis also records Enoch's genealogy in detail. Hebrews says that God took Enoch away, which seems to hint precisely at his ascent into heaven before the flood in a chariot of fire. And in the Epistle of Jude, there is even an entire passage, almost quoted word for word from the Book of Enoch, once served as an important intellectual source for canonical texts. For instance, the Apostle in 1 Corinthians 11:5-6, to cover their hair in church, is often understood as a matter of ritual decorum. But when read alongside the Book of Enoch, it seems to arise directly from the story of the Watchers being drawn to the long hair of human women. The tradition of covering the hair is still preserved today in Catholic and Islamic cultures. So even after being censored, marginalized, and even forgotten, the Book of Enoch never truly disappeared. Behind it seems to lie something deeper still, something that goes beyond the question of whether it belongs to the Christian canon. Some have pointed out that Enoch, the seventh ancestor in the Bible, corresponds clearly to Enmedarenki, the seventh pre-flood king in Babylonian tradition. There is an obvious parallel. The ancient Greeks regarded Enoch as a prototype of Hermes, and in ancient Egyptian tradition, figures highly similar to him can also be found. There are many more examples like this, and so the question becomes even more intriguing. Why does Enoch, under whatever culture or name, keep appearing again and again? According to Sumerian writings, in the remote past, Earth was visited by a group of supernatural beings. These beings, as described in Sumerian tradition, are astonishingly similar to the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. That the Sumerians called them the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven. In the eyes of the Sumerians, the Anunnaki were gods. But to certain modern thinkers, such as Zechariah Sitchin and Eric von Däniken, they seem more like an extraterrestrial civilization that visited Earth in antiquity. In Sumerian myth, the Anunnaki intermarried with humankind. This is almost identical to the Watchers joining with human women and giving birth to the Nephilim. Sumerian myth records that the gods were enraged by the chaos on Earth and ultimately brought forth the Great Flood. This point, once again, overlaps closely with the narrative of Enoch. Could the Book of Enoch and its related traditions be merely different retellings of the far older Sumerian story of the Anunnaki? Now let us look at the agricultural revolution. Around 10,000 BCE, humans began to move from hunting and gathering toward agriculture and settled life. Historical records show that as early as 9500 BCE, in what is now Kurdistan, people had already begun cultivating barley and rye, while also growing oats, peas, and lentils, and domesticating goats and sheep. Roughly 500 years later, copper and lead smelting had already appeared there, along with weaving and pottery making. Even more astonishing, this ancient Kurdish culture was also among the first to develop writing, becoming one of humanity's earliest literate civilizations. The question is, how did humankind, in so brief a span, complete such a dramatic leap in evolution? What makes this intriguing is that the Kurds call themselves children of descendants of a spiritual people. So, could this be an ancient cultural metaphor, pointing to a lineage between divine beings and human women? According to the Sumerians, it was the Anunnaki who brought advanced knowledge and technology to humankind. In a certain sense, they personally propelled the course of human civilization. Many believe this may be precisely why those impossible ancient structures could have appeared at all. The pyramids of Giza, Tiwanaku, and other highly complex, magnificent ruins far beyond the conditions of their age. The precision of these structures plainly does not match the human technological level recorded by history. Perhaps this also explains how humankind, within an extremely short historical nomadic hunters into highly organized, civilized societies. What is astonishing is that the Book of Enoch describes a process almost exactly the same. The Watchers described in the book act in ways highly consistent with the Anunnaki. They taught humans advanced knowledge and technology, teaching metallurgy, mining, science, and medicine, teaching humans to read and write, to observe the stars, to use cosmetics, to make jewelry, and to reveal the secrets of war. Chapter 8, verses 1 to 3 of the Book of Enoch say, Azazel taught humans to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He showed them the metals of the earth and the methods for working them. He taught them to make bracelets and ornaments, to use antimony to beautify the eyes, and to know every precious stone and pigment. And it was after all this knowledge was taught that humankind began to sink into it, to fall, to stray from the righteous path, and gradually become corrupt in all its deeds. Viewed from this angle, the Book of Enoch may not be a myth invented from nothing, but more like a transmission and retelling of an even older story, the history of the Anunnaki's arrival. What is intriguing is that the things in human history most often considered impossible to explain by the social and technological conditions of their time are often believed to be related to this outside intervention. The most typical example is the pyramids of Egypt. According to the ancient Arab historian, these pyramids were not built by humans of the pharaonic age, who lived before the Great Flood. This king was named Surid, and in Hebrew, that name can happen to be translated as Enoch. In one chapter of the Book of Enoch, Enoch personally witnesses the secret of thunder and lightning. This description is not poetic ornament, but a veiled reference to knowledge of energy and electricity. And this, once again, directly echoes the legends of the Anunnaki. Many people believe that the Anunnaki have long been trying to reveal these forgotten technological secrets to humanity, and that crop circles are one of their methods. In our latest episode about crop circles, we mentioned that in just a few decades, these patterns have displayed complex mathematical formulas, electromagnetic field electrical diagrams, and even precise expressions of electromagnetic field lines. By all rights, such things should never appear in a field at all. If we combine this with the Book of Enoch's description of heavenly journeys, this connection becomes even more uncanny. Enoch once said that he was taken to a suspended palace, a place so immense that it seemed to be made of cut glass. The floor was made of transparent glass, and through the floor he could see the stars rushing past below. Seen this way, before the Great Flood, was the fiery chariot that carried Enoch away from Earth. Really only a mythic symbol? Or was it some kind of flying craft, misunderstood by ancient people as a miracle? No wonder the stories of the Watchers, the Anunnaki, the Nephilim giants, and other accounts capable of rewriting human origins were gradually marginalized in later ages, and even removed from the canon. The Book of Enoch's final exclusion from the biblical canon may not have been accidental, precisely because if these stories were true, they would completely rewrite human history and redefine what humanity is. Their exclusion from Orthodox history is therefore not hard to understand. But perhaps these stories never truly disappeared. We might change our perspective and look again at the Bible's most familiar story, Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. If we do not treat it as literal history, nor merely as religious prophecy, but read it instead as metaphor, many details begin to reveal new correspondences. God created Adam and charged him with tending the earth. This is extremely similar to the role described in the Book of Enoch, where the gods send the Watchers down into the human world. Adam and Eve were permitted to enjoy everything except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Yet in the end, they still ate the fruit of knowledge. If the tree of knowledge is understood as a symbol of higher knowledge or advanced technology, then this act corresponds exactly to the scene described in the Book of Enoch. The Watchers revealed to humanity secrets that did not belong to the earthly realm: astronomy, metallurgy, medicine, writing, warfare, and the arts of adornment. Just as Adam and Eve, by gaining knowledge, came to see the world of the gods, the Book of Enoch also describes humanity, after receiving these heavenly mysteries, beginning to reach toward the realms once belonging only to the gods. Reading it this way, the story of Adam and Eve and its parallels with the Book of Enoch are almost impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Perhaps the writers of Genesis were not creating myths out of empty air, but retelling in another form a far older and more ancient story. A story of those who descended from forbidden knowledge and humanity's awakening. Just as civilizations across the world have again and again, in different languages and under different gods, told the same memory. And so the question follows: is human history really only the single line recorded in official history books, or within myth, prophecy, and forgotten texts? Is there another earlier layer of truth still hidden? Perhaps the answer has never truly disappeared. It has merely changed its form and continued to be told.